First of all, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah. Just well, doing, as more coffee and I'll be even doing better.
Right.
So
Yeah. I know about you and your coffee addiction.
yes, it's only my second cup of the day. So I'm a little,
Oh, good.
so it's so I barely even started.
Congratulations on Fargo. I thought the season was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, me too. I'm so thrilled to be part of that. Yeah. I
Can you
mean,
talk about how you got involved in the project?
they asked me. That was a nice thing. Yeah, they it was I think it happened. I was at the I guess the second annual Hollywood Critics Association Awards, or as I called it that evening, the Hakas. I think they've given it a name this year. This past year, I think they finally, because they didn't want people calling it the Hakas. And the Kids in the Hall won an award that night, which we were very surprised by. I was particularly surprised uh, by it because I had to accept it. Um, and then after I ran into Warren Littlefield, who I knew from back in my news radio days, who was always a big supporter of our show, and we were chatting for a while. And I hadn't talked to Warren in probably 20 years, and then a couple of months after that, I got this call. Oh, they want you to do a part in Fargo. And apparently, as I understand it, I guess it was Warren suggested to Noah that I might be good as the as Danish, and Noah wasn't appalled by the idea, and so they offered me the job, and I was as a huge fan of the Fargo series, and also a huge fan of Noah's because I was also a huge fan of the show Legion that he did. Um, I was just very excited. Yeah.
Uh, Danish Graves may be the greatest character name in recent history, first of all.
Oh, and well, that's the thing is Noah's up there with Dickens when it comes to character names, if you ask me.
How would you describe Danish?
Danish, he's he's I would say in many ways he's an orphan. I think he's a man without family or roots, and who has decided that this uh, really ruthless woman is going to be his family, Lorraine, played by Jennifer Jason Lee, and uh, and will do anything for that family, anything at all, no matter how evil. And and that's kind of the only place he belongs and the only kind of roots he has in life. Other than and the and he just absolutely admires and Lorraine and her ruthlessness and aspires to be Lorraine, I think.
How different was Danish from the script to what we see on the screen, or was there a difference?
I don't. Well, I it's hard for me to say. It depends how unhappy Noah was. Um, I think it was. I mean, really. Uh, I mean, it's. I mean, my goal was to stick very close to the script and try to do what was on the page because the writing was so good. That was a really like it's a wonderful feeling when that's all you're worried about. Just when you're going, oh, how do I not ruin this, as opposed to how do I make this make sense,
Right.
which is sometimes what happens. Um, but yeah, it was yeah, almost all. I mean, the character, the eye patch was in there. Although in the script, all it said was from a childhood injury. There was no other explanation. I kept thinking, oh, this is gonna make sense eventually. We're gonna hear
Right.
that what happened. No, I just liked the look. He just he just thought an eye patch was cool.
Was it difficult to play with the eye patch to perform? Was there any kind of
It
side
was difficult
side
to
effects?
drive.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you have to drive a really nice Porsche at some point as
He
well.
had to drive like a $250,000 car through the snow without my glasses on and with an eye patch. And I very foolishly decided when in the first wardrobe fitting, I put the eye patch over my good eye. Um, so the the eye that actually has the better vision, I covered up. So yeah, so it was that was a little difficult. Walking up and down stairs, that was tricky. I didn't think about that, but going up and down stairs was very tricky with only one eye. Um, and also reaching for my coffee was a little difficult. I had to be really careful because that's really important. Because if you're not, you'll knock a coffee over, and that's just a tragedy.
The story's set in 2019, and it seems very much a byproduct of that era. Can you
Mhm.
just talk about how the politics of that time play into the story?
Well, I think it was if we can harken back to a time when um, you know, I'm trying to think, how do we describe it? Um, before society totally collapsed, when it was just when we were just in the middle of the collapse,
Right, right.
and you never really appreciate something when you're in the middle of it. Um, so it was yeah, I think it was I know it was sort of reflecting on a crueler, more base and terrible world that we were wandering into, and a world of where all that really mattered was what you could get away with, and and I mean, obviously, there's the underlying themes of the whole show are about debt and indebtedness, and what's the morality of debt, and what is the psychological damage of debt, and what is the power structure of debt, and because we're suddenly seeing that overrode all other considerations, all kinds of morality, any kind of ethics, any kind of religious beliefs could all be overridden just by the sheer uh, power of getting what you want. And I think that the ugliness, I think, of what we were wandering into, I think, is highlighted. But then there's also, I think, this season of Fargo has a tremendous optimism, which is not something you normally associate with Fargo. Um, but I think the underlying message is that the 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 strength and goodness of Dot prevails and dominates the ruthlessness of the world. And I think that's an incredibly I very deliberately didn't read the last episode of the season,
Oh,
because I
interesting.
didn't want to know. I wanted there to be one episode that where I didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
So when I
Um,
got when I got to that last episode, I was deeply moved by it. I thought it was
sure.
just amazing.
Yeah. Without spoiling too much, I think there are people haven't seen it.
Yeah. Well, those
The
people. What's
the
wrong with
the
these people?
world the world in which Danish is accustomed to excelling in is very different than the world that John Hamm's character Roy excels in.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel as if, but do you feel as if maybe I gave Danish a false sense of confidence?
Oh, definitely. The thing is, like, yeah, Danish is living in a world where everyone's afraid of him because of what he can do to them financially, usually, or reputationally. So, and whereas John's character lives in a world where people don't even know how much danger they're in until he kills them. You know, so it's and that kind of true ruthlessness, that kind of actual violence, as opposed to just spiritual or emotional or intellectual violence, is for lack of a better term, it does trumpet. You know,
Right.
yeah. So like Danish walks into that place thinking everyone, his whole life everyone's afraid of him because he has the power of Lorraine behind him, and he starts to think that power actually emanates from him, and that that he's untouchable, because he's used to intimidating people, and it's I guess kind of I guess you could liken it to someone like Michael Cohen, you know, who you know was once the kind of the hitman for his terrible boss, and then suddenly when that I guess the superstructure's pulled out from under him, you know,
Right.
you realize, oh, that none of that was me.
Many of your scenes are with Jennifer Jason Leigh, and
Yes.
you're a seasoned professional actor, but I imagine that working with her might have been a little intimidating.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, because I mean I've been a fan of of Jennifer's ever since I was a movie usher, working in the theater where Fast Times was running, you know. So I've seen everything Jennifer's been in, I think. And and I worked with her once before on a brief in a movie in Canada called Child Star, a long time ago. So I knew she was a very nice person. So that was,
Right.
but yeah, definitely going to those scenes going, oh, hope they don't just have to cut around me. Is my, that all it'll be is, oh, Danish, oh, the off camera voice, Danish Graves. Yes.
Um, this isn't your first drama, but I mean, you're primarily known for comedy. Do
Yes.
you approach the two differently as far as your process is concerned?
Not really. I mean, I guess in part, I guess, because especially with the kids in the hall, we always approached comedy as though it was drama in terms of the
Right.
performance. Like we always believe that you have to play it. You have to, and also I think that was kind of true of news radio too. The idea was we always kind of had an approach of burying the comedy.
Right.
Never highlighting, like never like pointing an arrow at the comedy. Um, and it's all, and it's always about especially when I'm like being in other people's scenes and kids, it's all your thought is always just, okay, what do I need to do to make this scene
Right.
work? What do I have to do to make this believable and in the case of a comedy, I'll make all the jokes work, you know. So that's it. You just really understanding the material and understanding what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to accomplish, so that's sort of the same. I think the only thing for me was like trying to find, because I'm a comedian, and there's so much dark comedy in Fargo, and I think I just sort of relied on Noah Hawley to tell me when I where he'd want to dial stuff up and down, in terms of playing the comic moments of it.
Sure.
So I think I probably leaned towards really dialing down the comedy in some places, and I think Noah probably brought it back up a little bit in places.
You've done every possible medium. You've done stand up to sketch comedy, voiceover, TV, film. Is there any particular medium that you feel best suits you as a performer?
I'm sorry, what was the end of the question part?
What does anything in particular best suit you as a performer? Do you feel more comfortable doing one thing over another?
Not really. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, I love there's aspects of each thing that I really love. I think I'd like to, yeah. I wish radio plays would come back. I'd like to do more of that. Um, but I mean, I definitely the detail and control of doing like a film performance, like a single camera film performance, is really fun. Uh, and and I love being on a film set. I don't think there's any place I'm more comfortable than on a film set. Um, but then there's us like doing a multicam show in front of a live audience, and with a really good ensemble is a kind of a thrilling thing on its own. And I wish there was more of that too now.
Yeah, it's a dying art form out.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and it is an art form when it's done properly. And I mean, I think I definitely think like some of the greatest American art is All in the Family or Mary Tyler Moore, or the old Dick Van Dyke Show. It's it's a unique hybrid of theater and film, and it's also the only time you really unless you're in a really privileged position, you don't usually get to rehearse when you're making films.
Right.
And or doing a single camera TV show, you don't get to rehearse. But on a on a sitcom, you spend 3-4 days getting to rehearse and work the material, which is a nice aspect of it.
Do you feel that you want to pursue more roles like Danish, or some
Yeah.
stick with the drama or dark comedy in this case?
I'd love to do more stuff like Danish. I'd love to do more drama, or drama, as we say in Canada. But yeah, that if those opportunities come along, yeah, they don't it's, I guess people don't usually or haven't really thought of me that much in that context, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely love to do more of that.
Well, I honestly think this may be opening more doors for you because I think you were great at it. So
Oh,
good luck
thank you
there.
so much. Thank you. I
Yeah.
hope. Well, yeah.
I have to ask you about your podcast.
Sure. Well, yeah.
Really, with Tom and Dave, what it's UFO focused.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about that podcast?
Well, it's a podcast that came about because I guess about 10 years ago I started um, realizing that there was something very serious going on in the world of UFOs, or UAP as they're now called. Um, um, when I saw a film called Out of the Blue by a director named James Fox, and it was and that was kind of the and like, I've always been interested in the subject and always believed that there's just too much anecdotal evidence for it to all just be nonsense. And and I was like, back in '97, I remember the Phoenix Lights, and I went, oh, the explanation for that never was satisfying. So I started looking at this film, and it was full of like military and government officials from around the world, all telling really credible stories of weird encounters. And I started going, well, there's just too much evidence here that I hadn't been exposed to, and too much just real data that I hadn't been exposed to. And so I started taking it seriously and doing more research, and read a great book by Leslie Kane, the title of which I can never remember, but it's a great book about UFOs. It's all accounts of military and government officials going on the record about the UFO reality um, in their own words. And and the more I thought, and then I started sort of talking about it publicly, and that sort of it brought things into my world, and I wound up getting to meet a lot of very interesting people, um, and started telling all of this. And then eventually the weird thing happened was that I was out with a documentary filmmaker and investigative journalist, Jeremy Corbell, who I'd become friends with because I had talked about his documentary about Bob Lazar on the Joe Rogan show. And so he heard about that and reached out, and we became friends. And then after we'd been friends for a couple of years, one night we were out walking his dog, and we saw a UFO, which was a bit of a surprise, since neither of us had ever seen anything or anticipated seeing anything. So we had this shared experience. So then suddenly it became less of an intellectual curiosity and going, oh, damn.
Oh,
That's just now it's just there. So the podcast kind of came out when my friend Tom Wheeler, who got curious. Well, I think first worried. First he heard Dave's talking a lot about UFOs and seeing a UFO on Twitter, and his thought was, oh, Dave's gone crazy. So then I started telling him what was going on in government right now, what was happening with various Congress people and senators who were taking it seriously, and he got obsessed and started researching, and he dove in. He said, "Well, we should do a podcast." And a lot of that was just, I thought, well, I can, maybe I can help lessen some of the trauma and damage that's done to people by the stigma surrounding UFOs. Because I don't know what it is, but I know it's real, and people have been seeing it for decades or centuries, and the stigma around it has destroyed people's lives, and people are suffering,
sure.
living with these experiences, and it's the human suffering that's caused by the stigma. I thought, well, I can't do much, but maybe I'm not a great investigator, but maybe I can at least, talk and
Right.
make it okay to talk, and make maybe lessen some of that suffering for people. And happily we've had some people on the podcast who have said that, it's been really a positive for them
That's great.
to discuss what's happened to them.
Right. Well, that's wonderful. Well, Dave, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank
Congratulations
you. I
again.
appreciate it.
I ran into you really briefly at Fan Expo a couple years ago. You and the rest of the kids were there.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I was doing my press passes. You were walking through the lobby. You were very kind. You were very nice. You're very Canadian. I'm from Buffalo, so I know my Canadians.
Oh, yes. And I know my Buffalonians.
So, but it was very pleasurable to talk to you then. It's nice to talk to you again, sir. And congratulations again.
Okay. And good luck with the rebuilding of the Sabres.
We got a long road ahead of us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, they're
Take
going to
care.
dismantle
Bye-bye.
the Maple Leafs, I think, this offseason. So we'll see.
Well, good luck.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.